Okay, so my name is Michellee Fox. I have been in the United States for 19 years. I'm a Brazilian, and I live now in Eastern Washington, which is very close to Canada. We're on 90 acres, which is a second generation farm. This house is where my husband was actually born and raised. My father-in-law built it. And we just moved here about 2 years ago when we were in Humboldt growing cannabis regeneratively. And we found out that he was, you know, having cancer and things were not happening for him. He's been here alone for 20 years. So we decided to come over and take care of him and take care of the property. And we're turning this into a regenerative wild PNW herb farm. I would like to sell herbs that are used for culinary, but also for medicinal purposes. So I can use both of those. Yeah. So coming from Brazil, I learned how to cook with my grandmother. My mother passed away when I was 4 years old in a car accident. So my maternal grandmother kind of took over. And I remember about the age of 7 is when I started learning how to cook. And she made sure I understood that the reason why I was learning was the purpose of it was to prepare me to be a good, worthy wife, And so that kind of went well for a minute. By the time I became a teenager, that machismo culture didn't sit well with me at all. So I became a skateboarder filled with tattoos. I have about 32 of them, and later a chef. Um, I was doing skateboarding. So then I went to Alabama as an exchange student and for a year, which is the weirdest thing ever. I mean, if you don't think about it, it's really weird. I had my skateboard, my hair was half purple, half yellow, and 1,000 population, and they're like, "Who are you?" So I had a really hard time, but I did learn English then. Got back to Brazil, finished my high school in Chatham High School in Alabama, and created my own skateboarding business there. And then started translating for the World Cup of skateboarding because we were the first girl skateboarding in Brazil ever. And so I could speak English and Portuguese. So I was translating, skating the contest, met a professional skateboarder from Grass Valley, born and raised. And we got married within the year, like, dumb teenagers do. And, I moved to Grass Valley at the age of 22, had Julian at 23, just barely at 23. Um, and from there, everything changed. I went to understand that the reason why me and him will only hang out for no longer than 2 weeks the entire time we knew each other was because he was bipolar and that he didn't want to show that side of himself. So by the time I was pregnant, having a baby, the whole switch kind of switched off, and I got to learn of what my reality was going to be. My baby was born in America. That means I can't take him to Brazil, and so I was kind of stuck. My family was like, yeah, whatever, you left us. So it was kind of very lonely. And so I was on that abuse. We then moved to the big island of Hawaii, which is a beautiful place. I like to say that is like, the closest I will ever get to Brazil in America is Hawaii. We're so alike. We got taken by the Portuguese. I mean, we love each other, but the laws for domestic violence are very lenient up there. And so I didn't know that was the reason why we moved, but that was the reason. And so things got really extremely bad. And long story short, I finally moved into a women's shelter with my 5-year-old son in the Big Island. He burned everything I had, like, and it was really crazy. And so, sitting in a room with all these women, we had mandatory 2-hour meetings every day at 6 o'clock. And so sitting there, I got to understand that the victim mentality is what allows a person to treat you a certain way, and that I had a part in that process. So when he was hyping up into the best of, he was the best person ever, better than anyone I've ever known. And so, but then I was like, oh, the bad is coming. And then when it was really bad, I was like, oh, this is awful, but the good is coming. So we were riding that roller coaster together. Without me, he could have been that person. So I learned that. I thought I learned that, but I really didn't. I started to understand, I think, at that point. So I moved. He actually found the women's shelter and it was a big scandal. So then, which that's a big no-no, right? And so they were kind of like, you can't be here anymore. So I grabbed a backpack, took my 5-year-old, and we moved to San Francisco. Um, and from there, I needed to jump on the grind. What I do, I know how to do. I know how to cook, and so I jumped in many kitchens, and like 3 or 4 of them, and I was mistreated worse, I feel like, because you're a damn stranger and I'm working for you. At least he was my husband, in a way. So, and there's a lot of abuse in the kitchen that is not spoken about, that is advertised by television, where it's extremely cool to be. People are making millions of dollars of being that person, right? And so I just thought, I was watching those shows at the time, and I just thought that's just how it is. There's nothing I can do about it. And so, but my big objective in life is to make really clean, nutrient deep food that is delicious, and like love and care and excitement and happiness. If you don't have those ingredients, your food will not taste like that. So I remember grinding it like 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, getting called on my seventh day and being like, if you don't show up, you're fired, and all that. And thinking, man, like, how come we make such crappy food? I don't get it. Why is it? Everything's made from start, from scratch and all this. And I was like, why is it? And when I turned 30, which is a big birthday, right? So when I turned 30, I realized that the anger and the angst that was caused on someone chopping vegetables and frying the steak or whatever, that is somehow kind of like push through you and push into the food as like bad hormones in a cow, and so I realized that, as long as I was gonna, I might as well just stayed married in Hawaii. It would have been so much easier, cheaper. He took me to court and the whole story. So um and then I started saying like, okay, I need to leave. But then every time I was like, you're treating me bad, and I think I'm gonna leave. The response was, like the colonizer, you know what? You don't speak enough good English. You are not good enough. There is no way you're gonna go anywhere, and nobody's gonna take you. So then I was like, oh shit, okay, I guess not. And I would like sink back in. Couple of months go by, and I think about the time I was 32 was when, I was running this restaurant as a line chef and a line cook, really. And I think we had like 150 seater. We are packed for 6 hours. I'm making him bank. And I'm frying like 7 burgers here and frying shrimp over here, making a salad. I'm running all stations and this and that. And this guy comes in with his like, fool, I know better than you, never step a day in the kitchen, but he has enough money to have a restaurant. And he said, you know what? Like, let me see the spatula and let me show you how the burger needs to be made. And right there, that was the time that like the, what do they call it? The straw that broke the camel. I literally dropped the spatula on the ground and I say, why don't you cook it yourself? And I walked away. And that changed my life completely because I freed myself of the colonizer. I freed myself of the idea that I was not good enough. that everything I did, I had to be behind you because you're a man and you're a white, or you are American, or you are a restaurant owner. There's always many reasons why, you know, you should be less than others, because otherwise the slaves wouldn't work, right? Because you have, 1,000 slaves for one master. How the hell? And the reason why is because they taught you that you're just not enough and you can't make it. And so when I got out of that slave mentality, really, that's when I spent 3 weeks of suffering the uncertainty of not having a way to feed my kid. And by the fourth week, I'm sending a million of resumes and this and that. And by the fourth week, I met this man, which had a really bad back, like 7 herniated discs at the age of 30 because of motorcycles. And he was a millionaire in San Francisco, and related to cannabis. And that's how my cannabis story starts also. But, he was like, I need a home chef that's going to cook 7 days a week, 3 days 3 times a day, 7 days a week, Ayurvedic food. And I was like, I got that. Never heard of it. Bought the book, figured it out. And so I'm cooking this man Ayurvedic food, and he's loving it. And every day I'm like, in skateboarding and like punk rock and tattoos, and we're so cool, and I've done events my whole life, which it was only like 5 years or whatever, I was like my whole life. And one day he was like, you know what, like I can't take you talking anymore, like let's put those contests and events together. So we did two 30,000 people festivals in San Francisco with professional skateboarders, big 50-foot ramps, 15 tattoo shops tattooing on a federal building, which is a feat that I can't even like come down to explain how hard that is to bring blood into a federal building. And this whole thing, and everything changed. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I see it. And from that day on, I have never again allowed anyone, a friend, a lover, a child, a family member, anyone, to treat me badly because they're having a bad day. That is really important. I understand that after you treat me shit like badly, that you're gonna come back the next day and say, "Hey, I'm sorry. I My car broke down, whatever." Right? Like I get it. The thing is that I am not your beating horse. You are not allowed to treat me this way just because you feel crappy. I feel crappy too, and I don't treat people that way. So let's move forward. So off of that, I I started to jump up. I became executive chef. And next from executive chef in San Francisco, which is very competitive, is to try to find a Michelin star, is to try, and I was like, it was so unsustainable. It was like a hamster wheel. I was making $80,000 in 2010 and not having a grand to travel extra, right? So it was a hamster wheel, and it was always more and more and more, and the food got smaller and more expensive. And then I was like, you know what? Like I can't do this. So that coincides where, I've been fighting for my son back and forth. He's been back and forth. We're being in court for, I don't know, 5 years or something. And by the age of 9, he said, you know what, you two, I want to live a year in Hawaii with my dad, and I want live a year with my mom in California. And so he's been with me for 3 years at that point. So it was dad's year. So when he left, I sat in that apartment in San Francisco, by a really good school district, and cried and I cried. And I was like, wait, I have an entire year without the kid. Where am I going? So I moved to Humboldt, and became a trimmer, then a house mother, which take cares of a bunch of trimmers. And then I started learning regenerative farming. Long story short, met my new husband, and 5 years later, and we grew 7 years of regenerative farming in Humboldt. Um, And then we're doing super great there, had our own company and everything. And then my father-in-law got sick and we moved here. And so moving to 1,000 people population, little town by Canada in the middle of nowhere, I was really worried that I was going to be really bored. So I started sending emails before I even got here, like, hey, barter fair, 10,000 people, great festival. Hey, I have all this experience. Community center, you guys are not doing anything. I can be your executive director. So I was the executive director of the community center. I'm on the board as the treasurer of the barter fair, and I run, I think we do 3,000 meals in 7 days in a jungle kitchen with barely anything in it. And um, everything was okay. And then COVID hit. And then all those things shut down, and I had no job. And I was sitting here kind of going crazy. And then Clubhouse, I don't know if you guys, all of you guys in the call know about Clubhouse. Clubhouse is this crazy thing that's happening in the world right now. It's an app that is voice only. So you cue pictures, don't cut. You have to be able to have a conversation with people all over the world. And I got invited on Clubhouse January 2nd. Julian was born 9 seconds after midnight on January. So he was born, January 1st, 9 seconds after midnight. So he was here, snow everywhere. It's January 1st. He's like, okay, peace. I'm going snowboarding with my friends. And my husband and his daughter are going to play in the snow. And I'm like frozen in front of the wood stove. And I'm like, oh my God, he's just 18 years old, and I thought this was the time that I was gonna like flourish into the world. And here I am in the great white north, isolated. Help me. And so my friend was like, here, there's a new app. I'm inviting you, come in. You're an iPhone user. And I came in. Long story short, here we are 3 months later. I am, let's see, how do I start? I am the business development manager for North and South America of Food Bait Network, which is a 24-hour healthy food and lifestyle network in Africa. I'm also their brand new talent. So May 18 to June 22nd, I'm going to Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya to film my new television show called Food Source, where I trace ingredients from the plate to the farmer. And on Clubhouse, I created a club called Female Farmers Unite to kind of bring the voice into the women, female farmer, and the female chef and everybody. And so I have like over 2,000 members there, and we host rooms with like hundreds of people. Um, in 5 days, I'm about to go to Tulum for a regenerative agriculture conference in the middle of the jungle in a resort to cook for dinner for 30 people 3 days in a row. And that is all through Clubhouse. And the power of that, not the app, but the idea of before you had Instagram and Facebook where nobody could really communicate, and LinkedIn, nobody really communicates. There's a picture and you kind of like, oh, I like your thing, but we don't really talk. It's very like sad and depressing. But on Clubhouse, you have to put your voice out there and you have to talk to people. And so things like, it's like, I like to say it's like LinkedIn on, the speed of light. Like you meet someone and you have a conversation and then you're like, let's talk offline, and then you talk to them on a phone and you feel like you know them for 10 years. And today I was just in a room talking to the main Netflix food person that decides what the new shows are going to be on Netflix. Out of the blue, had no idea he was there, and it was just like, "Hey, how you going?" Like, call me, and it's like, "Oh, that way who you are? Oh, okay, cool. I can send you my, EPK or whatever." So it's amazing how like people are like missing connection, and once you give that to them, then things really flourish. So I position myself, I am, the chef and the farmer, the slow food chef, which slow food means that less, how many miles does your food that's going into your mouth took to travel and how many columbines did it take to harvest. So that is all fast food. When you started going slower, smaller, slower, then you go into slow food. So I'm a slow food spokesperson. I'm working with the UN in the food summit because I am a certified KNF. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. KNF is Korean Natural Farming, really ancient way of growing where you use your surroundings extremely cheap to grow things. So I'm a certified KNF instructor and teacher and spokesperson. So I talk on the UN with Nigeria and Ghana to figured it out how to help Africa, how to become a better farmer and not to have as many, dust bowls and all that. Also working with NASA, which is really crazy. Working with NASA because they have a brand new food challenge to figure it out because the astronauts that are staying there 3, 6 months, they are having extreme headaches. They're having dizziness because they don't have the atmosphere. So we're trying to and the food is heavy and it tastes horrible and it produces all this waste. So they are making teams of people, and I come in as the regenerative farmer and herbalist to help figure it out a way to make every food they eat to become medicine, and what is wasted to become food into the plant that they're going to grow again and over again. And again, that is all through Clubhouse, which is crazy. So I feel like that day that I dropped the spatula was the day that I decided that I was no longer a victim. I decided that you're no longer can treat me this way. And I decided that, you know what, it's now my turn and I'm going to do whatever I want. And here we are.